The desperate plea. The silver ship appeared in Earth's outer space like a dying star. It moved slowly, much slower than any ship the humans had ever seen. The metal looked old and worn, with dark patches where something had burned through the hull. Inside the ship, Ambassador Cathara held onto her chair as the vessel shook again. Her blue skin had turned pale, and her 4 arms trembled with exhaustion. "We are almost there," her pilot said in their language. His voice sounded tired and scared. Cathara looked at the small blue planet ahead of them. Earth. The humans lived there. Just 50 years ago, these humans had barely learned to fly between the stars. The other races in the galaxy still called them primitive. But now, the humans were the only hope left. The Gray Death had killed billions across 12 different worlds. It started small, like a cold or fever. Then it grew stronger. It shut down the body piece by piece. First, you could not move your arms. Then your legs stopped working. Finally, your heart would stop beating. No medicine worked. No treatment helped. The smartest doctors in the galaxy could do nothing but watch their patients die. The Zephyrian Confederation had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. 12 different alien races worked together, sharing knowledge and power. They had technology humans could not even dream of. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days. Their computers could solve problems in seconds. Their weapons could destroy entire moons. But none of that mattered now. The Gray Death did not care about advanced technology. It killed the strong and the weak just the same. Cathara remembered the day the first cases appeared on Zephyr Prime, her home world. A small village reported strange sickness. The doctor said it would pass in a few days. 3 months later, the entire village was dead. 6 months after that, half the planet was infected. Now, 11 of the 12 Confederation worlds were under quarantine. Billions of people waited to die. The human space station grew larger in the ship's front window. It looked crude compared to Zephyrian technology. The metal was rough and the design was simple, but it was clean and bright with lights that showed people were alive inside. Earth Station 1, this is Zephyrian vessel Kethmora. We request permission to dock, the pilot said into his communicator, speaking in the human language. Permission granted, Kethmora. Bay 7 is open for you. Welcome to Earth space, came the reply. The human voice sounded warm and friendly. Cathara had practiced her speech many times during the long journey. She would ask politely for help. She would offer to pay with rare metals or advanced technology. She expected maybe a few human doctors would volunteer to study the disease. If she was lucky, they might find something the Zephyrian doctors had missed. The docking bay was full of humans when she walked out of her ship. They all looked so young and energetic. Their faces showed curiosity and concern, not fear or disgust. A tall woman with short brown hair stepped forward. Ambassador Cathara, I am Director Lisa Park. We received your message about the plague affecting your people. Please tell us how we can help. Cathara was surprised by the directness. Most diplomatic meetings took hours of formal words before reaching the real subject. She began her prepared speech about the Gray Death, explaining how it worked and why their doctors could not stop it. As she spoke, more humans gathered around. They asked detailed questions about symptoms and infection rates. Some took notes on small computers. Others whispered to each other, already thinking of solutions. Their energy was infectious. We need researchers, Cathara finally said. Doctors and scientists who might see what ours have missed. We can pay with technology or materials from our worlds. Director Park looked confused. Payment? Ambassador, your people are dying. We will help because it is the right thing to do. Within an hour, Cathara found herself in a conference room talking to 12 different human experts. Dr. Sarah Chen, a disease specialist, asked questions that showed deep understanding of the problem. Engineer David Kumar wanted to know about Zephyrian biology. Geneticist Maria Santos offered to compare human and alien genetic codes. How many researchers do you need? Dr. Chen asked. Cathara had hoped for maybe 10 or 20 volunteers. Perhaps 50 would be enough to start, she said carefully. Dr. Chen looked at her colleagues and smiled. I think we can do better than that. 2 hours later, Director Park called a meeting. The main conference room was packed with humans. They had called doctors from all over Earth. Scientists stopped their important work to listen. Military officers offered ships and supplies. The Zephyrian people are facing extinction, Director Park announced. They have asked for our help. How do we respond? The room erupted in voices. Everyone wanted to volunteer. Dr. Chen stood up and shouted over the noise. We need to organize this properly. I volunteer to lead the first medical team. I will. Take a research ship to their space, called out Captain Martinez. My crew is ready to leave today. The University of Geneva offers our entire biology department, announced Professor Weber through a video call. More voices joined in. The Tokyo Institute of Technology offered their laboratories. The Brazilian Medical Corps volunteered their field hospitals. The Russian Space Agency promised transport ships. Kethara sat in shocked silence. She had asked for a few doctors. Instead, thousands of humans were fighting over who could help first. Director Park finally restored order. We will need coordination. Dr. Chen, can you organize the medical response? Already on it, Dr. Chen replied, typing rapidly on her computer. I need volunteer doctors, nurses, and researchers, anyone with experience in infectious diseases, genetics, or alien biology. Her computer screen began filling with names. Hundreds, then thousands of humans registered as volunteers. Some were experts in their fields. Others were students who wanted to learn. A few were just ordinary people who felt they had to do something to help. Ambassador, Director Park said, turning to Kethara. How soon can your ship guide our first team to your space? Kethara's forearms gestured weakly. In her culture, this showed overwhelming emotion. We expected maybe a few volunteers. This is too much. How can we ever repay such generosity? Dr. Chen sat down next to the alien ambassador. You do not need to repay anything. Your people are suffering. That makes it our responsibility to help. But why? Kethara asked. We are not the same species. We are not even from the same world. Why risk your people for ours? The room grew quiet. Humans looked at each other, sharing an understanding that needed no words. Captain Martinez spoke first. Because it is what we do. When someone needs help, we help them. Because suffering is wrong, no matter who is suffering, added Dr. Chen. Because we are all alive together in this galaxy, finished Professor Weber from her video screen. Kethara felt tears forming in her large, dark eyes. In thousands of years of Zephyrian civilization, they had never seen anything like this. Other races helped their allies when it benefited them. They traded assistance for advantage. They calculated costs and benefits before acting. But these humans were different. They saw strangers dying and immediately made it their own problem to solve. As the meeting continued, more humans joined by video from around Earth. The Australian Medical Society offered field experience with unknown diseases. The African Space Consortium promised supply ships. Even civilian groups wanted to help. Children's schools organized fund drives to buy medical supplies. By the end of the day, over 10,000 humans had volunteered to fight the Grey Death. They came from every nation, every background, and every profession. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to save lives. Kethara sent a message back to the Confederation Council that night. She tried to explain what had happened, but the words seemed impossible. How could she tell them that these primitive humans had responded to their plea with something beyond anything in their experience? The humans called it compassion. Kethara was beginning to understand it might be the most advanced technology in the galaxy, beyond the call doctor. Sarah Chen had never seen anything like the Zephyrian medical data. She sat in her laboratory on Earth Station 1, surrounded by screens showing disease patterns that defied everything she knew about biology. The Grey Death was like no virus, bacteria, or genetic disorder in human medical history. It seemed to target the nervous system first, then spread to every organ in the body. This is impossible, muttered Dr. James Wright, a specialist in infectious diseases. He had flown in from London just 6 hours after hearing about the crisis. Look at these cell structures. The disease breaks down protein bonds that should be impossible to break. Dr. Chen nodded, but she was not ready to give up. Around her, 43 other human doctors and scientists worked at similar stations. They had been analyzing Zephyrian medical records for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Dr. Chen called Captain Martinez from the communications panel. We have another message from Ambassador Cathara. The situation is getting worse. The main screen showed the alien diplomat's tired face. Her blue skin looked even paler than before, and her forearms moved with obvious exhaustion. Dr. Chen, I bring more bad news. 3 more worlds have reported infections. The Confederation Council has ordered complete quarantine of the affected systems. We also face food shortages because 7 of our agricultural worlds cannot harvest their crops. Dr. Chen felt her heart sink. The medical crisis was bad enough, but now the aliens were facing starvation too. She was about to express sympathy when Director Park entered the laboratory. Dr. Chen, we have had an interesting conversation with the United Earth Council. They want to know how much food the Zephyrians need. Food? Dr. Chen asked, confused. We are medical researchers, not farmers. The Council does not see it that way. They received Ambassador Cathara's message about food shortages. 3 major agricultural nations have already volunteered to redirect their grain shipments. Dr. Chen stared at the director. But that food was meant for human colonies. People will go hungry if we give it away. The Council spoke to the colonies. Every single one agreed to reduce their food imports. The colonists on New Texas said they could survive on half rations if it meant saving alien lives. Before Dr. Chen could respond, Engineer Marcus Rivera burst into the laboratory. His work clothes were stained with oil and metal dust, and he looked like he had not slept in days. Dr. Chen, we have a problem. The Zephyrian ships cannot carry human food efficiently. Their cargo systems are designed for different types of containers. So we cannot send them food? Dr. Chen asked. Marcus grinned despite his exhaustion. I did not say that. I have been working with a team of engineers from 6 different nations. We have designed new cargo containers that work with both human and Zephyrian systems. The first batch will be ready in 4 days. How many engineers are working on this? Director Park asked. About 3,000 at last count. We have teams in orbit, on Earth, and on 5 different space stations. Everyone wants to help. Dr. Chen shook, her head in amazement. She had thought they were just here to study a disease. Instead, the entire human space program seemed to be reorganizing itself around helping the aliens. The next morning brought more surprises. Captain Elena Vasquez arrived at Earth Station 1 with a fleet of 12 human transport ships. Her crew looked ready for action, despite having traveled for 2 days straight from the outer colonies. Dr. Chen, Captain Vasquez announced, we have orders to begin refugee evacuation from the infected Zephyrian worlds. Evacuation? Dr. Chen asked. That was not part of the original plan. Plans change. We received reports that the Zephyrians have millions of healthy people trapped on infected worlds. The Confederation cannot evacuate them because they do not have enough ships, so we are going to do it. Dr. Chen felt a chill of fear. Captain, those worlds are under quarantine. The disease is highly contagious. Your crews could be infected. Captain Vasquez nodded grimly. We know the risks. We also know that people are dying while we talk about it. My crews volunteered knowing they might not come back. But why take such a risk for aliens you have never met? Because they need help, and we can provide it. That is enough. Over the next week, Dr. Chen watched in amazement as the human response continued to grow. The medical research team had expanded to include experts from every human colony and space station. Dr. Martinez brought virus specialists from Mars colony. Dr. Singh arrived with genetic engineers from the Jupiter mining stations. Professor Zhang contributed disease modeling experts from the asteroid belt settlements. But the medical work was just part of a much larger effort. Human cargo ships began regular supply runs to Zephyrian space, carrying food, medical equipment, and basic supplies. Engineering teams worked around the clock to modify human technology for alien biology. Civilian volunteers organized fund drives to buy supplies for refugees. Dr. Chen called Dr. Wright from his workstation. "I think I found something important." She hurried over to look at his data. He had been comparing human and Zephyrian cellular structures for days. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a complex diagram. "Human cells have a protein structure that the Gray Death cannot break down. We are naturally resistant to the infection." Dr. Chen felt excitement and hope rising in her chest. "Are you saying humans cannot catch this disease?" "That is exactly what I am saying. But more importantly, look at this." He switched to another screen. "The protein that protects us can be synthesized. We might be able to create a treatment." "How long would it take to develop this treatment?" "With our current resources, maybe 6 months if we are lucky." Dr. Chen made a decision that would change everything. She called an emergency meeting of the entire research team. When everyone had gathered, she shared Dr. Wright's discovery. "This means we can send human medical teams directly to the infected worlds," she concluded. "We can treat patients without risk of infection. We can be hands-on caregivers in ways the Zephyrian doctors cannot." The room erupted in volunteers. Every single person wanted to be on the first medical mission to Zephyrian space. Dr. Chen had to establish a rotation system to give everyone a chance to help. But the most surprising response came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Keth Ara arrived at Earth Station 1 the next day, not alone this time. She brought 12 other Zephyrian diplomats representing different species within their confederation. "Dr. Chen," Ambassador Keth Ara said, "we have come to ask for more help. The Gray Death has spread to 2 other species that were not part of our original confederation. They have nowhere else to turn." Dr. Chen expected this to be a problem. Human resources were already stretched thin. They were working at maximum capacity to help the Zephyrians. Adding more species to the crisis seemed impossible. Instead, Director Park smiled. "Ambassador, please provide us with biological data on these new species. We will begin researching treatments immediately." "But you are already doing so much for us," protested one of the other diplomats, a tall, thin alien with silver skin. "How can you take on more responsibility?" Dr. Chen answered without thinking. "Because more people need help. That makes it our responsibility to provide it." The alien diplomats looked at each other with expressions of confusion and wonder. In their experience, help came with conditions. Assistance had limits, resources were finite, and priorities had to be set. But these humans seemed to operate by different rules. The more desperate the need, the greater their response. The more people who suffered, the more humans stepped forward to help. That night, Dr. Chen received a message from Earth. The Global Health Organization was redirecting their entire emergency response system to support the alien crisis. The World Food Program was organizing the largest supply operation in human history. The International Space Cooperation Agency was designing new ships specifically for alien evacuation missions. Dr. Chen realized that what had started as a simple medical consultation had become something much larger. Humanity was not just helping the Zephyrians. They were adopting the entire crisis as their own responsibility. She looked out the station window at the stars where billions of aliens waited for help. Somewhere out there, human ships were already racing through space loaded with supplies. Human doctors were preparing to risk their lives treating patients they had never met. Human families were donating their savings to buy medicine for alien children. Dr. Chen smiled and went back to work. There were lives to save, and she was beginning to understand that for humans, that was the only motivation they needed. The human way, Doctor. Sarah Chen stepped off the transport ship onto Zephyrian soil for the first time. The air was thinner than Earth's atmosphere, with a sweet smell that reminded her of flowers. The city around the landing pad should have been beautiful, with tall spires of blue crystal reaching toward the sky. Instead, it looked like a ghost town. Empty streets stretched in all directions. Windows were dark in buildings that should have been full of life. The only sounds came from automated systems still running without anyone to watch over them. The Gray Death had reached this world 3 months ago. Half the population was already gone. Dr. Chen, called Marcus Rivera from behind a stack of medical equipment. "The field hospital is almost ready. The Zephyrian doctors should arrive within an hour." She nodded and watched her team unpack supplies from 12 human transport ships. They had brought everything they could think of: medicine, diagnostic equipment, life support systems, and enough food for 6 months. But most importantly, they had brought themselves. Dr. James Wright was setting up a laboratory in what used to be a Zephyrian school. Dr. Martinez was organizing treatment stations in the old hospital. 23 other human medical specialists were working to understand alien physiology well enough to help their patients. "Dr. Chen," called Captain Vasquez from her communicator, "we have the first group of refugees loaded for transport. Where should we take them?" "Earth Station 1 has prepared isolation facilities," Dr. Chen replied, "but make sure they understand this is temporary housing, not permanent exile." "Already explained, Doctor." Interesting thing, though. Several refugees asked why humans are taking such risks to help strangers. Dr. Chen smiled. She had heard that question dozens of times over the past few weeks. The answer was always the same, but aliens seemed to have trouble understanding it. A group of Zephyrian medical personnel approached the human field hospital. They moved slowly, showing the exhaustion of people who had been fighting an impossible battle for too long. Their leader, Dr. Vexhai, raised her forearms in a gesture of greeting. "Dr. Chen, we are grateful beyond words for your presence here. But I must warn you, this disease is unlike anything we have seen. It may be too dangerous even for humans." "Dr. Vexhai, we appreciate your concern, but our tests show humans cannot be infected by the Gray Death. We can work directly with patients without protective equipment." The Zephyrian doctor's large eyes widened. "You can touch infected individuals without risk?" "Yes. In fact, that might be part of the solution. Human contact seems to have a positive effect on patient morale, which may help fight the disease." Dr. Chen had discovered this by accident during their first week on the planet. A young Zephyrian patient had been crying in fear and pain. Without thinking, Dr. Chen had reached out and held the child's hand. The patient had immediately calmed down and seemed to improve faster than others receiving the same treatment. Now, human doctors and nurses were spending as much time providing comfort as they were giving medicine. They held hands with dying patients. They sat beside worried family members. They played simple games with children who were too sick to understand what was happening to them. The Zephyrian medical staff watched in amazement as humans performed tasks no other species would attempt. Dr. Wright spent 6 hours sitting with an elderly Zephyrian man who was afraid to die alone. Nurse Johnson learned basic Zephyrian lullabies to sing to frightened children. Engineer Rivera built simple toys for young patients using spare equipment parts. "This is not normal medical behavior," Dr. Vexhai observed after watching humans work for several days. "Your people provide emotional support as well as physical treatment. Is that unusual?" Dr. Chen asked. "Very unusual. Most species focus on technical solutions to medical problems. Emotional needs are considered secondary. For humans, they are the same thing. We cannot treat the body without also caring for the mind and spirit." Dr. Vexhai made a note in her computer. "This approach seems to improve patient outcomes significantly. Can you teach us these techniques?" "Of course, but it is not really a technique. It is just caring about the people you are trying to help." While the medical teams worked on treating current patients, other humans were addressing the larger crisis. Food shipments from Earth arrived daily, but they were not just basic supplies. Human colonists had sent comfort foods, treats, and delicacies to help refugees feel less homesick. More surprisingly, the shipments included personal items. Human families had sent toys for alien children, blankets for refugees, and even handwritten letters of encouragement. The letters were translated into various alien languages, but their message was universal. You are not alone. People care about you. 8-year-old Zethlin was a Zephyrian child who had lost both parents to the Gray Death. She was staying in the refugee center when a package arrived addressed to any alien child who needs a friend. Inside was a stuffed animal that looked like a cross between a bear and a rabbit, along with a letter from Tommy Watson, a 12-year-old boy from Earth. Dear alien friend. The letter read, My name is Tommy. I heard that kids from your world are scared and sad. This is my favorite stuffed animal, Mr. Fuzzy. He always makes me feel better when I am scared. I want you to have him so you can feel better too. I hope we can be friends someday. Your friend, Tommy. Zetlin clutched the strange earth animal and began crying. But for the first time since her parents died, they were tears of comfort rather than despair. Stories like this were happening across Zephyrian space. Human civilians who had never met an alien were sending personal possessions to help refugees. Children drew pictures showing humans and aliens playing together. Elderly humans recorded video messages sharing wisdom and encouragement with alien families. Dr. Chen called Dr. Wright from the laboratory. I think I have made a breakthrough with the protein synthesis. We might be able to create a treatment that works for all infected species. She hurried to look at his research. After weeks of analysis, he had found a way to modify the human protein that resisted the Gray Death. The modified version could be injected into alien patients, giving them temporary immunity while their own bodies learned to fight the disease. How long to mass produce this treatment? She asked. With current resources, maybe 2 months for enough medicine to treat the seriously infected. 6 months for a full immunization program. Dr. Chen nodded, but she was thinking about something else. Dr. Wright, have you noticed something strange about how humans are approaching this crisis? Strange how? We came here to help with a medical emergency, but look around. We are not just treating the disease. We are caring for refugees, sending comfort items, providing emotional support, and trying to solve every problem these aliens face. Dr. Wright paused his work and looked at her thoughtfully. Is that wrong? Not wrong. Just different. Most species would focus on the immediate problem and ignore secondary issues. We seem to be adopting all of their problems as our own. Well, yes, their children are scared, so we send toys. Their families are separated, so we provide transportation. Their people are dying, so we develop treatments. It all seems connected, to me. Dr. Chen realized he was right. For humans, there was no distinction between helping with the disease and helping with everything else the aliens needed. When they saw suffering, they responded to all of it, not just the part they had been asked to address. That evening, she received a message from Ambassador Cathara. The alien diplomat appeared on screen looking better than she had in weeks. Dr. Chen, I have received reports from all our worlds with human medical teams. Patient survival rates have improved by 40%. Refugee morale is at its highest point since the crisis began. How is this possible? Dr. Chen thought carefully before answering. Ambassador, I think it is because humans do not see medical treatment as separate from all the other things people need to feel well. We treat the whole person, not just the disease. But your people are doing much more than medical treatment. They are caring for our emotional needs, our social needs, our spiritual needs. This goes far beyond what we asked for. Yes, it does. But that is how humans help. We do not just solve the immediate problem. We try to make everything better. Ambassador Cathara was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Chen, in 12,000 years of Zephyrian civilization, we have never encountered anything like human compassion. Your species approaches helping others as if their well-being was your sacred responsibility. Is that not normal? It is completely unprecedented. Most species help others when it benefits them. Humans help others because helping others benefits everyone. Dr. Chen smiled and looked out the window at human and alien medical staff working side by side. Tomorrow, more refugee ships would arrive. More patients would need treatment. More families would need comfort. But tonight, for the first time since the crisis began, she felt hope. Not just hope that they could cure the disease, but hope that they could help these aliens rebuild something better than what they had lost. Total Commitment President Maria Santos stood before the United Earth Assembly, looking out at representatives from every human nation and colony. The emergency session had been called after receiving desperate messages from 17 different alien species. Word had spread across the galaxy about human medical assistance to the Zephyrians, and now everyone wanted help. Fellow citizens, President Santos began. 6 months ago, The Zephyrian Confederation asked us to help fight a plague. Today, we face requests for aid from species across the galaxy. Some face diseases. Others face starvation. Some are fleeing wars. Others are dealing with natural disasters. She paused and looked at the data displayed on the main screen. The numbers were staggering. Over 50 million aliens now needed immediate assistance. Human resources were already stretched to their limits helping the Zephyrians. The question before us is simple. What is our responsibility to these beings who are not human, not from our world, and not part of our society? Representative Johnson from Mars Colony stood up first. Madam President, my colonists are already living on reduced food rations to support Zephyrian refugees. We cannot take on more obligations without risking our own survival. The Australian delegation agrees, called out Representative Park. We support the current missions, but we must set limits. We cannot save everyone in the galaxy. President Santos nodded thoughtfully. These were reasonable concerns from reasonable people. Earth's resources were not unlimited. Human colonies needed support too. There had to be limits to what they could do, but then Dr. Sarah Chen requested permission to speak from her medical station in Zephyrian space. Madam President, members of the Assembly, I want to share something that happened yesterday at our medical facility. Her image appeared on the main screen, showing her standing in what looked like a busy hospital. Alien and human medical staff moved between patients in the background. A ship arrived carrying refugees from the Vex-High system. These are insect-like aliens who have never had contact with humans before. They were dying from a different disease, not the Gray Death, but something that attacks their respiratory system. Dr. Chen moved to show a patient bed where a large mantis-like alien was breathing with the help of human medical equipment. This is Kliktar. She is a mother of 7 children. When she arrived, she was afraid of humans. She had heard stories that we were aggressive and dangerous. But when her youngest child stopped breathing, she had no choice but to let us help. The camera showed a smaller, insect-like creature in a medical bed, with human nurses monitoring its condition. Dr. Wright spent 18 hours developing a treatment for Vex-High physiology. Nurse Martinez stayed awake for 2 days caring for the child. Engineer Rivera built a specialized breathing apparatus that works with Vex-High biology. Dr. Chen turned, back to face the camera directly. Yesterday, Kliktar's child recovered enough to speak. The first words it said were in English. Thank you. Not because anyone taught it our language, but because it wanted to express gratitude in the language of the people who saved its life. The assembly hall was completely silent. President Santos felt emotions rising in her throat, but she maintained her professional composure. Dr. Chen, what is your point? My point, Madam President, is that yesterday I watched a human nurse cry with joy because an alien child could breathe without assistance. I saw a human engineer hug a giant insect creature because his medical device worked properly. I watched human doctors celebrate the recovery of patients they had never met before this week. Dr. Chen paused and looked directly into the camera. These people are not helping aliens because they are ordered to. They are not helping because they expect rewards. They are helping because they cannot bear to watch suffering without trying to stop it. The silence in the assembly hall stretched on. President Santos looked around at the faces of her fellow leaders. She saw the same internal conflict on every face that she felt in her own heart. Representative Kim from the Korean Space Territories stood up slowly. Dr. Chen, what would you need to help all 17 species that have requested aid? Every available ship, every trained medical professional, every engineer who can adapt our technology for alien biology, and probably every spare resource we have. And if we do this, what happens to our own colonies and settlements? Dr. Chen smiled sadly. They will struggle. Resources will be tight. Some projects will be delayed. Life will be harder for humans across the galaxy. Then why are you asking us to do this? Because, Representative Kim, I have learned something about humans over the past 6 months. When we see others suffering, we suffer too. When we can help, but choose not to, we are not really human anymore. President Santos felt the weight of history on her shoulders. This decision would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. They could choose the safe path. helping within their limits and protecting their own interests first. Or they could choose the path that every human heart seemed to be calling them toward. "Dr. Chen," she said finally, "send us a complete list of what every species needs. We will figure out how to provide it." The assembly hall erupted in voices. Some representatives cheered, others protested. A few demanded votes and formal procedures. But President Santos had seen something in the faces around her that made voting unnecessary. Even the representatives who had argued for limits were nodding their heads. Deep down, they all knew this was what humans would choose to do. Over the next 3 months, the human response reached levels that amazed even Dr. Chen. The Global Emergency Response Organization was expanded into the Galactic Aid Coordination Center. Every human medical school began teaching courses in alien biology. Engineering programs added specializations in cross-species technology adaptation. But the most remarkable changes happened at the individual level. Human families began adopting alien refugee children whose parents had died from various diseases. Human colonies opened their homes to beings they could barely communicate with. Human children learned alien languages so they could write letters to refugee children on distant worlds. Commander Jack Foster found himself managing the largest logistics operation in known history. Supply ships ran constant routes between Earth and 47 different star systems. Food, medicine, technology, and personnel moved across the galaxy in a complex dance of coordination and cooperation. Commander Foster called his logistics coordinator. "We have a problem with the supply run to the Luminar system. Their silicon-based biology means they cannot use standard food shipments. What do they need instead?" Foster asked, already thinking of solutions. "Processed minerals and certain metal compounds. The Earth Mining Consortium says they can provide what we need, but it would use up their entire quarterly production." Foster did not hesitate. "Tell them to redirect everything to the Luminar refugees. We will find alternative suppliers for Earth's industrial needs." These decisions were being made thousands of times every day by humans across the galaxy. Every choice prioritized alien needs over human convenience. Every solution put saving lives ahead of saving resources. Dr. Chen received a message from Earth that summarized the scope of their commitment. Human hospitals had treated over 2 million alien patients. Human ships had evacuated 15 million refugees from disaster zones. Human engineers had developed medical technology for 23 different species. But the most telling statistic was different. Over 90% of humans involved in the galactic aid effort had volunteered for assignments longer than their original commitment. They were not being ordered to help. They were choosing to help, again and again. Dr. Chen called Dr. Wright from his expanded research laboratory. "I have an update on our progress with the multi-species treatment protocol." She walked over to see his latest findings. After months of research, human scientists had developed treatments for all 12 diseases affecting the various refugee species. But more importantly, they had created a medical network that could respond to future crises across the galaxy. "Doctor, look at this data from our treatment facilities. Patient recovery rates are consistently higher when humans are involved in their care, regardless of the species or the disease." Dr. Chen studied the charts and graphs. The pattern was clear and consistent across all species they had helped. "Why do you think that is, Dr. Wright?" "I think it is because humans do not just treat diseases. We treat people. Every being we help becomes personally important to us. That extra care makes the difference between recovery and failure." That night, Dr. Chen stood outside the main medical facility and looked up at the alien stars. Somewhere, out there, human ships were racing to help species they had never heard of 6 months ago. Human doctors were learning new types of biology so they could save unfamiliar kinds of lives. And somewhere on Earth, human families were explaining to their children why they had less food this year. Because children on other worlds were hungry, too, and sharing was the right thing to do. Dr. Chen smiled and went back inside. There were still patients to treat, refugees to comfort, and lives to save. But for the first time since this all began, she understood that humans had not chosen to help aliens. They had chosen to expand their definition of family to include the entire galaxy. The new order 2 years after Ambassador Cathara first arrived at Earth Station 1, she stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 100 different species filled the great assembly hall on the newly constructed Unity Station. The massive space station orbited between Earth and Zephyr Prime, serving as the diplomatic heart of what everyone now called the Galactic Alliance. Distinguished beings, Ambassador Cathara began, her forearms gesturing to the diverse crowd before her. We gather today to formally establish the principles that will guide our shared future among the stars. In the front row, Dr. Sarah Chen sat with other human representatives. Behind them, the alien delegates represented every species that had received human aid during the Great Crisis. Some were familiar faces like Dr. Vexhai and the insect-like Vexhai representatives. Others were newcomers who had only recently made contact with the growing alliance. 2 years ago, the Zephyrian Confederation faced extinction from the Grey Death. We asked the humans for medical assistance. We expected a few researchers and perhaps some technical advice. Ambassador Cathara paused and looked directly at the human delegation. What we received instead transformed our understanding of what it means to be civilized beings in this galaxy. The hall filled with a low humming sound that Dr. Chen had learned was how many species showed agreement. It was the galactic equivalent of applause. The humans did not just cure our disease, they cured our despair. They did not just save our lives. They showed us how to live better lives. They did not just offer aid. They offered something we had never experienced: unconditional compassion. Dr. Chen felt uncomfortable with the praise, but she understood its importance. The formal ceremony was not really about congratulating humans. It was about establishing new principles for how civilized species should interact with each other. Today we established the Galactic Health Initiative, Ambassador Cathara continued, led by Dr. Sarah Chen, to ensure that no species ever again faces extinction from disease while others have the knowledge to help. Dr. Chen stood and bowed to the assembly. The past 2 years had been the most exhausting and rewarding of her life. The medical network she now directed included doctors and researchers from 47 different species, all working together to prevent future health crises. We also established the Galactic Refugee Assistance Program, announced Captain Elena Vasquez from her position at the podium. No being will be left homeless when disaster strikes their world, regardless of their species or planet of origin. The refugee program had grown far beyond its original mission. What started as emergency evacuation had become a permanent system for helping displaced populations. Human ships now carried standardized equipment for housing refugees from any known species. Human colonies had established permanent sections for alien residents who chose to stay, rather than return to their home worlds. We create the Galactic Emergency Response Corps, added Commander Jack Foster, to coordinate assistance during natural disasters, conflicts, and other crises affecting any member species. The Emergency Response Corps was perhaps the most remarkable development of the past 2 years. It operated like a galactic fire department, with ships and personnel stationed across the galaxy, ready to respond to any crisis within days. The majority of the personnel were human, but every member species contributed according to their abilities. But the most significant announcement came from an unexpected speaker. Zethlin, the young Zephyrian who had been comforted by a stuffed animal from Earth, now stood at a microphone designed for her small size. "I want to tell you about the Children's Friendship Program," she said in careful but clear English. "Human children and alien children now write letters to each other. We share pictures of our families and our worlds. We learn each other's games and songs." Dr. Chen smiled as she watched the young Zephyrian speak. The Children's Friendship Program had been completely spontaneous, started by children themselves, without any adult planning. Now over 10 million young beings across the galaxy were pen pals with children from other species. "I have 7 human friends who send me letters," Zethlin continued. "They tell me about snow, which we do not have on my world. I tell them about our crystal gardens. We are planning to visit each other when we are older." The simplicity of children making friends across species barriers had proven more effective at building understanding than decades of formal diplomacy. Children did not care about biological differences or cultural barriers. They just wanted to play and share stories. These programs represent more than emergency assistance, Ambassador Cathara explained as she returned to the podium. They represent a new way of thinking about our responsibilities to each other. She activated a display showing a map of the galaxy. Colored lines connected hundreds of star systems, showing the network of mutual assistance that had grown from the original crisis. Before the humans showed us a different path, each species focused primarily on its own survival and advancement. We helped others when it benefited us. We shared knowledge when we expected something in return. We measured success by how much better we were than our neighbors. The display changed to show resource flows, population movements, and technology transfers occurring across the galactic network. Now we measure success by how well we care for all beings in our galactic community. We share resources because others need them, not because we expect payment. We offer assistance because helping others is the foundation of civilization. Dr. Chen thought about how much had changed since that first desperate message from the Zephyrians. Earth's role in the galaxy had been completely transformed. Instead of being seen as primitive newcomers, humans were now regarded as the moral center of galactic civilization. But the changes went both directions. Human society had also been transformed by their contact with dozens of alien species. Human cities now included neighborhoods designed for various alien biologies. Human schools taught galactic languages and cross-species cooperation. Human children grew up expecting to have friends from other worlds. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Cathara called, "Would you please share your thoughts on what we have accomplished together?" Dr. Chen stood and walked to the podium, looking out at the most diverse gathering of intelligent life in known history. She thought about the millions of beings whose lives had been saved, the children who now considered aliens to be friends, and the new understanding of what it meant to be part of a galactic community. Ambassador Cathara, distinguished representatives, 2 years ago you asked us to help fight a disease, but what you really asked us to do was care about beings we had never met, from worlds we had never seen. She paused and looked at the human delegation, thinking about all the sacrifices their people had made. For humans, caring about others is not a choice we make. It is part of who we are. When we see suffering, we cannot ignore it. When we see need, we cannot turn away. When we see beings struggling to survive, we must help them, or we are not really human. The hall filled with the humming sound of agreement from dozens of different species. But what we learned over these 2 years is that this capacity for care, this drive to help others, is not unique to humans. Every species here has shown the same compassion when given the chance. The Vexhi have become expert refugee counselors. The Luminar have shared their crystal-growing technology to help terraform damaged worlds. The Zephyrians have turned their medical knowledge toward healing, rather than just treating. Dr. Chen smiled as she looked at representatives from species who had been enemies just 2 years before, and were now close allies. What we built together is not a human achievement. It is proof that all intelligent beings can choose compassion over competition, cooperation over conflict, and love over fear. The assembly hall erupted in the various sounds that different species used to show approval. But beneath all the different noises was something else, the sound of beings who had found their place in something larger than themselves. After the ceremony, Dr. Chen found herself on an observation deck, looking out at the stars with Ambassador Cathara. The view showed ships from dozens of different species moving between the stars, carrying supplies, personnel, and messages of friendship across the galaxy. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Cathara said quietly, "Do you ever regret how much your people gave up to help us?" Dr. Chen thought about the question seriously. Human colonies did live with fewer resources now. Human families did make sacrifices to support refugees. Human children did go without some luxuries so alien children could have necessities. Ambassador, let me tell you what my grandmother told me when I was young. She said that the measure of a person is not how much they have, but how much they are willing to give away. She pointed to a human transport ship loading supplies for a distant alien colony. 2 years ago, humans were alone in the galaxy, focused on building our own colonies and solving our own problems. Now we are part of a family that includes over 100 different species. Our children have friends on worlds we never dreamed of visiting. Our doctors save lives we never knew existed. Our engineers solve problems we never imagined. Ambassador, Kethara's forearms moved in the gesture that showed deep understanding. You are saying that by giving everything to help others,